रामकृष्णे स्थिता हि यां सर्वविद्यास्वरूपां तां शारदां प्रणमाम्यहं परतत्त्वे सतालीनो रामकृष्णस्समाज्ञयं योधर्मस्थापनरतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम् कालिन्ती पुल्लकमले माधवेन क्रीटारतां ब्रह्मानन्तनमस्तुभ्यं सद्गुरो लोकनायकः सद्गुरो लोकनायकः जननं शारदां देवं रामकृष्णं जगद्गुरुं पादपद्मे तयो श्रुत्वा प्रणमामि मुहुर्मुहुः.
What does it mean?
One who is the mother of universe, Jananam Sharatam Devim, one who is the mother of universe, who is, Jagat Janani is Sharada Devi, Mahamaya Swarupa, you are. Ramakrishnam Jagat Gurum, and the Guru of the Jaga is the, Jagat Guru is Sri Ramakrishna in the Kali Yuga, the modern era. Together with both of you, I the hail or bow down to your lotus feet, to uphold the Dharma.
Okay. Welcome, Gopi bhai. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I am good.
Yes.
Thank
Happy
you so
Navratri.
much. Yeah, to you too.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Can you please introduce yourself, because you have come here for the first time?
Yeah. My name is Gopi Shankar Madurai. I identify myself as an intersex and genderqueer person. I'll come to what is intersex and genderqueer later. But then I'm the first intersex person to be appointed as statutory authority by the Government of India to uphold the statute of the Protection of Rights of Transgender Persons Act 2019, which was passed in the both upper and lower houses, and it is a law now. So I'm here with you people to share a lot of things about the politics and indirect knowledge war or the narratives which are being built, and the civil societies and the rights movement which are part of the discourse on the issues related to what is, we are calling the LGBT or the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community, or gender and sexual minorities.
So let's start with the definitions.
Yeah.
What is an intersex person? Because I'm sure many people would not know that.
Sex identity is something biological. All species in the world, with around us, have sex identity.
Slightly louder, because people keep complaining that you can't hear the audio.
Yeah. So the thing is that sex identity is something biological. A lot of species around us, living species, we classify them as male, female. And when it comes to Homo sapiens, we have gender roles. Sex identity is something when an infant is born with the stereotypical reproductive system, which we classify as male, we call it as male. That infant who was assigned as male at birth didn't decide it to be assigned as male at birth. It's Prakriti. The infant was assigned as male at birth, and nobody decides it, not the doctor or the parents or anybody. Same goes with the female. When the infant is having that so-called stereotypical female-like reproductive system, we call this infant as female. When the infant is born with or identified with ambiguous genitals, or the genitals which you can't easily classify either as male or female within the binary sex, we call those infants earlier with the infants born with DSD issues.
Okay.
Later we use the term intersex.
What is DSD?
disorders of sex development, or
Okay.
like issues around it. The earlier term was hermaphrodite. The term was very Hellenistic, and then a lot of people felt, intersex people felt it as a bit offensive in some other regions, um, and of course because of the Abrahamic values and a lot of other things around it. But coming to the issue of sexes, that is male, female, intersex. These are the three classifications we have. Gender in the sense, like for example, let me take you as an example, that Arihant Baya was assigned as male at birth and you were raised as a man. In case you were assigned as male at birth, but you were raised as a man, but then you were, transitioned as a woman, in the sense you are trans women. You can be a trans woman, but you can't be a female. For example, there is this girl called, somebody called XX, who was assigned as female at birth. And this XX, who was assigned as female at birth, was raised as, man. So, or transitioned as man. Then we call them as trans men. Like, we have a lot of examples, like, for example, Shikandi, Amba Ambalika's story, if you go to. So, this person who was assigned as female at birth can transition as a man and become a trans man, but they cannot be a male. So, first of all, our constitution, didn't properly define the term sex in the constitution, because whether the term sex means, sexual activity or sexual orientation or sex as an identity, or we denote the term, or we kind of use this term interchangeably to refer to diverse sexual orientation, gender identity expression, and sex characteristics in the court. And the honorable Supreme Court or the High Court or any judges, many of the medical professionals don't know the basic difference between sex identity and gender identity. We can't call a dog as a man dog or a women dog, right? So we can call it as male or female dog. So just not with us Homo sapiens, but with all animal, reptile, and every form of living organisms around us, we have classified it as either male or female, and in between, that is intersex, we call them as antarlingvashis, madhyalingis, or klebini, or kleba, or mabedi husilis, like that. So, coming to the issue of gender identity, so a male raised as a man or a female raised as a woman, we set it up certain standards in the society, because before 40 years or even before 15 years, we never had this concept of pink is for girls and blue is for boys. And if an infant is born assigned as girl in the birth, in the sense, they will put these days they're putting the baby in, they're placing the baby in a pink cradle. If the infant is assigned as a male, then they are placing the infant in a blue cradle, which is absolute nonsense. Like we in Indian traditions, having long hair or certain form of these external appearances, or the very kind of having long hair, or mustache, or beard, or hair on the chest, or the pubic hair, or like a lot of things what we kind of define as manhood and womanhood these days were actually not part of our system at all. in Bharatiya darshanas, you don't need to be a female to be a woman. You don't need to be a woman to be a mother.
How?
We consider, a neem tree, like this is a neem tree, and this is a goddess for us. This is this is a mother for us. We consider the earth as a Shri, Bhu, or Bhumi, which is a mother for us, and she don't need to be a female, like we personify her, you know with a very kind of our spiritual Jains, who are internal scientists, whom we call as rishis, have personified her in various forms and aspects, uh, and we all call cow, because in various traditions, whether it is Ikshwaku Kul or Soma Kul, that is the sun rays or the moon rays, which is, climbing their, that they are descendants of Kashyapa Maharishi, from either Aditi or Aditi's descendants. A lot of stories we see where, cow or a tree or an animal or a totem plays a vital role which guides them, so where it is not necessarily they should be you know a female or a woman.
The reason I asked is because in the West, a lot of this gender fluidity thing is the narrative is going on,
Yeah.
and they also say that you don't have to be a female to be a woman, right?
Yeah.
And things like that. So
There are a lot of
I wanted you to clarify that there is an Indian tradition which language may be the same, but what we mean by that is completely different from what they are implying.
yeah, see, we have beautiful traditions like Kutandava temple, Aravan tradition, or Jogappa tradition, or Mangalmukhi tradition, or a lot of traditions where, people who are assigned as male at birth, or, you know, uh, elevated to celebrate their womanhood in the name of, we call them as Hijras or Kinnars or Mangalmukhis or Arvanis or Sakibekis or Jogappas. We have regional names and like diverse identities and social stratification and language and music, art forms, a lot of things, for them here
Hmm.
in this land. Nowhere in the world you see a temple, a goddess or god specifically dedicated to a certain form of gender identity or sex identity. We can't see that anywhere else. Like we can see it here. Bachura Mata temple in the Bharuch, Gujarat, where a lot of gender diverse people come and worship her, is existing for thousands of years. And we have this Aravan Kutandava tradition, which is existing for more than at least 2000 years. We have a lot of traditions which are predating before Buddha. So,
Hmm.
first of all, we need to break this term LGBT.
Yeah, so this is what I wanted to ask you. What are the problems with the current approach to these issues?
Yeah.
Very important issues. As you say, first thing is let's understand the difference
Yeah.
between what is this term that is combined, that is
Yeah.
narrativized.
Yeah.
Pride marches are going on in the
Yeah.
West and in India also. They
Yeah.
have started. So why are we clubbing this LGBTQI?
See, the term LGBTQIA or plus or
Yes.
plus LGBTQIA refers to lesbian, gay, bisexual, which refers to the sexual orientation of the person. Q refers to queer. It refers to gender identity or sexual orientation, etc. And I refers to intersex. And especially the term T refers to transgender. So, first of all, this very kind of Western, especially the word promoted by American systems and civil societies, which is LGBT, which a lot of people identify with, themselves, or with the movement which supports them. It's a term which comes with hegemony. It's a term. It comes with vested interests and agenda and a huge economy around it. With a global purchasing power, which the economy we call it as rainbow economy, and it has a global purchasing power of at least more than $3 trillion. So we really have issues with that, because even before the term lesbian, gay, bisexual, we have indigenous terminologies, even before the term transgender, which become popularized in late 1950s or 1960s, when America didn't allow women to vote. We had women prime minister, and I mean, doesn't mean that women got all the rights here, but at the same time, things were very different. Our needs and necessities were different from the needs and necessities, or whatever America, you know, was kind of going ahead with. So we have a very beautiful system which have the beautiful indigenous names and terminologies. So instead of the term LGBTQIA, we kind of even in the policy space, at least in the policy space, we have popularized the term SOGIESC. That is, the nomenclature is not very specifically refers to a particular sexual orientation, gender identity, sex characteristics or gender expression or sexual orientation, whereas this refers to a kind. It's more scientific.
Can you explain the term?
The term SOGIESC means SOGIESC. That is sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and sex characteristics.
Okay.
Sexual orientation refers to diverse sexual orientation of the person whom an individual, irrespective of their sex identity and gender identity, physically, emotionally, romantically involved with. They may be heterosexuals, they may be homosexuals, they may be bisexuals, they may be pansexuals, they may be polysexuals. Like that, we have at least 15 types of sexual orientation. Gender identity expression refers to the very kind of gender role a person is performing or living in. Or this is not the very kind of notion I'm borrowing from the West or America or Europe, because we always saw gender as a kind of fluid thing. And especially in the Adhyatmic life, when you are following a very Adhyatmic life, you need to kind of withdraw a lot of identities. I'm such and such person. I was born to such and such family. Please leave that. I have this much money. Please leave that. And this is my identity. I'm a male. Please leave that. So you need to go beyond all this identity. You need to renounce all those identity to merge with Brahman, or you need to renounce all those identities to understand the very kind of the form of life which is residing inside you, which have n number of expandable identities, which is given to that by the world. So coming out of those identities is something very important.
So what you are saying is that the Western approach or the non-Indian approach of categorizing into LGBTQI plus is based on identity, right? And the Indian approach is
it's also promoting those identities.
Yeah, promoting and reinforcing stratification based on identity, creating a new identity. And you have these diverse people, you merge them together to create something that is very artificial. And because it's commercially viable, maybe, we don't know. And then
you can use them as vested interest. You can weaponize them.
Weaponize them, because you have now a mass of people, critical mass of people, by combining all these different identities and creating a new identity, right? Based on which you can run your campaigns, you can do whatever. And the other approach is your approach, which kind of you are saying that it is an Indian approach where you don't reinforce the same identities, you don't create the new identities, you live it. You basically pave a way where you you start to don't make that as the sole identity of your this thing, right?
I mean, having identity or coming up with identities is okay, but if it is going to reinforcing a very kind of materialistic structure which is not going to uplift us to a different level, then it is highly problematic. I mean, Gopi is an intersex and genderqueer person, we say, and Gopi is an intersex and genderqueer person. It is one important aspect of my life, but that is not the only important aspect, or that is not the only thing about me. I'm too many things. So
this whole approach of boxing people into one identity, homogenization of these identity across the world, that is very problematic.
Homogenizing and
Reducing
weaponizing
person to one identity.
Reducing people to make them to believe that is their identity. That's all they are, and that's what they are. That's it. Nothing else. So it's highly problematic, because in our sannyasa traditions, people need to renounce all the form of identities, including that they are sannyasis. That's why they are not allowed to wear sacred thread in the Dasanami Sampradaya we have. So even we have this recent transgender people or persons coming up and saying that, this is Kinnar Akhada and that and this, and then which
how do you see that?
It is not part of our system. Whether this Akhada is acknowledged by the Dasanami Sampradaya, Purigiri, Saraswati plus Sampradayas which we have, no.
Okay.
So because all the Sampradaya don't have Stri Akhada or Purush Akhada. Sannyas or the term rishi or sannyasis or gender neutral, more gender neutral, more when I mean gender neutral, they are very unisexual terminologies that refers to male, female or intersex person or anybody. Because we are not giving too much of, importance to the gender identity there, right? Because Ramana Maharshi says that, when somebody is falling on your legs, if you're a sannyasi, you don't have that ego that you are a sannyasi, that you should even renounce that you are a sannyasi to understand the sannyashood. So, it is not that, we have gay priests and lesbian priests in the Protestant churches of many European countries, like Church of Sweden or Church of Iceland or Church of England. Many Protestant churches do have gay lesbian pastors. We can't kind of, even the Church of South India, the Protestant church in the south of India, has appointed a transgender pastor. Who's not understanding that Hinduism is the only tradition, or the Hindu Dharma is the only tradition which accommodates this diverse gender identity and sex identity as integral part of the system. So we can't kind of, just because they have that in the Europe or America, we need to have that. So what is development? Basically, like just simply implementing whatever is implemented in America or Europe and implementing it here. We have Supreme Court judges quoting Hellenistic philosophers, not Indian, but then going, this particular country passed this beautiful law, and we are also, highlighting it and then taking it as a precedent and passing it here, but not knowing how it is going to endanger the very kind of indigenous systems and the beautiful traditions and, we have here.
Can you give an example how it endangers indigenous? What is indigenous tradition, and then how these latest judgments, how are they endangering that system?
See, around the globe, anybody who worship their selfless ancestors as their god. Some of our selfless ancestors, we worship them as our Kul Devatas. Anybody who worship their selfless ancestors as their god, anybody who worship God as mother, anybody who worship, nature as mother or nature as God, are indigenous. They are non-Abrahamic. They are non-structured. They don't fall into the very kind of the word we have religare, which refers to or which indirectly refers to bringing or binding people together under one thing. So we can't call these traditions as religion, but a life system. Basically, they are life system. They are not kind of we didn't created this identity. We inherited this identity. We born with this. We are that. It is not that we are becoming that. We are already that, right?
Hmm.
So it's not that a person is becoming Hindu, like a Christian and a Muslim, like. So that is what indigenous means. And like we have plenty of young number of indigenous gender identities and communities. For example, we have Criminal Tribes Act passed by the British, which criminalized the local Hijra, trans women, transgender people, especially Arvani, Jogapa, Mangalmukhi, a lot of indigenous gender diverse communities, gender minorities in Bharat. And even before them, we had Fatwa Ilamgiri and a lot of Mughalli and, Sultanate and starts from the Gilgis, and like even before that we had different systems and understandings, and especially Portuguese laws were very horrible actually, in persecuting such people who belong to diverse SOGIESC communities. So for them God created only male and female. Jesus is a kind of male, and Halla cannot be referred as a mother. But for us, like Mata Pita Bantu Saka Sapahi Ram Ram, we call Ram as our Mata, we call Ram as our Pita, we call Ram as everything, right? It's integral part of the tradition here, like.
But how do these judgments of late threaten that?
For example, we have this wonderful we had this, the Protection of Rights of Transgender Persons Act 2019. If a person want to become a trans woman, that is, under the transgender identity, we have many indigenous community identities like Hijra, Jogapa, Mangalmukhi, Arvanis, etc. All these indigenous native identities have their own social stratification and social structure and system. When a 14 or 15 years old child running out of their home because the parents are refusing to accept their child as what they are, they are feminine or effeminate, they are bullied for being what they are, and the society have a very kind of Victorian norms or system that a boy should be like this, a girl should be like that. We dress a lot of our children, irrespective of male and female, as a lot of male child or dressed as Radha. A lot of female children are dressed as Krishna. So this is not new to us. In Janmashtami we see children are just dressed as the way they are. I mean, especially as Radha and Krishna, irrespective of their gender. So we are not enforcing a particular gender role or stereotypes on them, right? But when they grew up, we become so conscious or so Victorian that like, oh my God, like this is what it is. So the parents are not accepting the child. The child is running away from the home and getting into the clutches of this Hijra Jamaat system. What is Hijra Jamaat system? The place where they live together. So if a person want to become a Hijra, they need to pay at least 2.5 to 3 lakh rupees as a tax morcha, they call, to their senior nayaks, the senior trans people. Once they pay it, they will be allowed to undergo this gender affirming surgery, for which we don't have medical protocols, or it is not medically ethical, and how essential and non-essential are these surgeries are debatable highly. So before 30 years, we never had this surgery. Even before 25 years, we never had this, surgery in this scale, like the commercialization and all those things. Especially such surgeries or gender affirming surgery are highly problematic. And for example, if a person want to become a Hijra, they need to pay at least 2.5 to 3 lakh rupees to their Hijra Jamaat system. We call it as Hijra Jamaat or Gharana or Haveli or Dayar. All of this have a lot of Nawabi, Mughali, of course, usage of Urdu and a lot of other things, because they ruled us for 800 years, and then like their influence on this communities and their subjects are quite high. And before 30 years, we never had all the surgeries, right? And at least before 25 years, we never had all the surgeries. We had this person called Tayama, who's the high priestess within them, and they kind of fix a date, and then they take them to the cremation ground, and they make them to at least dig a pit to at least 8 to 12 feet or whatever it is. They need to do it, and then they put a pole in front of the pit, and then in the night they castrate them, with 3 cuts or 2 cuts with aksha blade or palm shoot they used earlier, and but now we have the surgical procedures, which earlier we called it as sex reassignment surgery. The word sex is not very correct. So we use the term gender affirming surgery for such surgeries. Once after the surgery is done, once you pay the tax, you will be allowed to undergo this surgery. And once you pay this tax, you are allowed to undergo the surgery. And once you undergo the surgery, it will take at least 1 year for you to get the wounds to heal. It will take 1 year, and then after this 1 year, when everything is settled, you'll be domesticated to rape and,
What?
You will be domesticated into prostitution and begging.
Is it
98% of our community majority of our community members are into brothels and begging because of this. So, this system was abolished.
This is a syndicate.
Kind of. So this system was first questioned by the Protection of Rights of Transgender Persons Act 2019, which the present ruling government, the BJP government, tabled the bill. Congress was against it. Congress was very pro-Jamaat. DMK was against it. DMK was very pro-Jamaat. They say that they are against the oppression, the caste oppression, or they are against the racial discrimination, or whatever they say. They are very kind of liberal people, they say. But then they indirectly support this gory slavery system. If you think education will change everything, there is this person from Madurai who finished her, a trans woman from Madurai who completed her medical education in the government medical college, Madurai Government Medical College, with 67%, needs to stand on the road to earn 500 rupees per customer. At least she need to meet 5 to 7 customers daily. So the 450 rupees goes to her Hijra Nayak, the leader, and then the 50 rupees goes to her.
450
500 per customer.
What do you mean by customer?
People, men comes to have sex with these trans women. They get blowjob. They,
Really?
Yeah, they have sex there. We have all these places are known as hammams, and where the sex work happens. Not just with trans women alone. A lot of trans women also control spaces with women brothels too.
Yeah, that has been the Mughal tradition also.
Coming back to the the question you asked, how the present legalities or the system is affecting it. For example, the Supreme Court, without any understanding, came up with a term called third gender. How scientific the word third gender? They blatantly derived the word third gender from Tritiya Prakriti. Tritiya means beyond duality. Each Sanskrit word may have more than 30 to 35 or 40 meanings in its own. And according to our own exposure and experience and understanding and observation towards that particular word, we take that particular notion. The meaning what I mean will not be the meaning you mean for the same word I'm referring to, right?
Especially when you try to bring those kind of words into current vocabulary.
Yeah, for example, Tritiya means it's beyond duality. Prakriti is nature. People who belongs to beyond dual nature of the universe or society. That can be one way of understanding this. We can't just blatantly kind of simply translate it and put. And a lot of judicial body members were writing opinion, this law should not be passed because a lot of transgender people are protesting on the road. But who are the transgender people protesting on the road? They are the Nayaks who collect the taxes. US spent around more than 17 crores. At least Europe must have spent a considerable amount of money. Till 2015, we never had this concept of Dalit transgender issues. And then after 2016, the narrative of so-called Dalit transgender issues are rising up now. And
We'll come to that
yeah.
intersectionality, but
But
first,
then coming to the issue of this, people didn't want this law to be passed. They don't had any ground understanding of what is what.
Hmm.
And with so much difficulties, this particular law was passed in upper and lower house of the parliament, and the president signed it, gave consent, and it became a law. And here I am sitting in the council, National Council for Transgender Persons, in which we don't even have a nodal office to work on a lot of issues. But then coming back to, I come to that, how difficult it is for us to work with a lot of government systems, and Modi is really working hard on different senses, but then the bureaucrats under him are not same as him, right? Indian bureaucracy is one of the most lethargic and bureaucracy in the world, I can say. With the kind of ignorance they have, the decisions they delay impacts millions of lives, and it collapses a lot of system, and deroots a lot of system, and devastate a lot of lives. And Kashmiri Pandit issue is one such issue.
no, you're
Coming
true.
back to the subject,
I want to
how it-
specifically deal with the question of the courts and how their judgments are, against this indigenous approach or Indian approach.
for example, in recently Madras High Court Justice, there is this Justice Anant Venkatesan who passed a judgment. Oh, we need to recognize the relationship between two lesbian couples. So that is good. He recognized it. The court can ensure the constitutional rights of these people. But court went to an extent that directing a lot of government, and especially the Ministry of Social Justice Empowerment, the court said to my department that my department must list all the civil societies working for the so-called LGBTI rights in the ministry's website or in a portal, so these people can approach. Not 90%, not 98%, 100% of the community organizations working in India for my community, the LGBTQIA plus communities, are funded by vested interests from the Europe and America.
But that's a different issue, right?
So
We will come to that also.
No. Let me, what I'm saying is that the judge is asking those civil societies to be part of larger consultation process to the ministry. This is highly problematic. The judge is consulting those civil societies with vested interests to have understanding on the subject. We don't have a centralized nodal body or a body which prepares policies on issues related to SOGIESC for public-private sector to lie down strategies. We don't have any such centralized institution. We borrow, this, like 2 minutes noodles, or ready to eat food like that. Oh, that's already ready there. Why we should kind of bother about things? Let me just take whatever they have, and we are implementing that here. You are kind of introducing a new a weed or a plant variety, or which is unwanted.
Basically, the problem with courts is they are too much into the narratives and education from the West on these issues,
Yeah.
and America and West, particularly because those issues are quite prevalent there,
Yeah.
very hot, and they read the news, they read the judgments there, and they are transporting all those narratives, lock, stock, and barrel here, implementing them here, trying to implement them here, right?
Yeah, if, for example, that's what I said, right? Development is not something, you're implementing whatever is there in the West, you're implementing it here.
Yeah.
So, when
apart from the classification, LGBTQI,
yeah,
what is wrong with their approach,
the court's approach.
with the Western's approach,
The
Western world's approach?
The Western world approach reinstates and make you to believe in that identity, that you need to live in that identity. They commercialize your identity, they exploit your identity. Like, the word Dalit is exploited, the identity of Dalit is exploited and commercialized, and there is an economy around it, and there is vested interests around it. There are politics around it, the vote bank, and everything is around it now.
So the whole identity politics around this issue is very problematic.
Yeah,
and what are you trying to move away from that?
See, the materialistic approach of the West reinstates that you are this identity, you are what you are this, and you be proud of this. You go to the road, celebrate this and do things. But I have expandable list of identities. We must celebrate every form of positive identities we possess with ourselves. We are not going to the road and then like holding placards and celebrating all those identities. Creating awareness to understand the suffering, the struggle, the trauma, the diverse SOGIESC communities, that is people living with diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, sexual characteristics or expression, gender expression, is different from, reinstating their identity. And a government or a court cannot promote certain form of identity. They can kind of ensure the constitutional rights of the person, rather than promoting, or like without even dwelling into the details of like, what is gender affirming surgery, how essential is that, how non-essential is that, how it is affecting the very kind of human anatomy, is it medically ethical, who prepared the guidelines, is it community affirmative or that person affirmative. We don't kind of discuss all that. Oh, let the government offer free surgeries. We are living in a country where a lot of people don't have proper facilities. We many of our states didn't had bed for COVID patients. We can't kind of come up with these schemes and like promote these forms of identities, right?
So what should be the priority of the government?
Ensuring the constitutional rights is very important, rather than kind of, pleasing those communities. Our government or community, our government or bureaucracy love to please identity politics. They make it as a vote bank politics. In the era of identity politics, knowledge war takes place through identities, through selling identities, through commercializing identities. Why Ellen Homer,
let's talk about that. You talked about, you said that court is asking these civil societies, organizations, which are influenced by or funded by organizations in the United States or Europe or Western world, how dangerous that is.
I mean, see, the Home Ministry is saying, we want to recruit people for the Home Ministry, especially the LGBTI community for the Home Ministry. But the Home Ministry is not aware that, when I saw the some undersecretary or secretary, certain bureaucrats from the Home Ministry, that themselves, they are not aware that India became one of the first country in the world which allowed intersex people to openly serve in their army, in the paramilitary force called Sastra Seema Bal, SSB. This case was handled by Geeta Luthra, and it's a very, very path-breaking case, very important case, through which a lot of intersex individual, can be part of the defense system already. So when the contemporary, when the government, the present government want to kind of hire all these people or want to have policy for these people, the very first people they consult is, let me approach the civil society. They have ready-made solutions. They have ready-made strategy, the paper in their hand. Let me get it from them and implement it here. That is wrong, that is wrong. Why it is wrong? In the sense, because, their needs and necessities are different from our needs and necessities. Coming to that point specifically, that, so the problem we have with the Western approach or the Western civil societies intervening in India's interest is highly problematic. Why American civil societies fund or extensively write articles to stop the Protection of Rights of Transgender Persons Act 2019? Why they don't talk about the horrible gory slavery Hijra Jamaat system if they really worried about the rights? Why, as an intersex and genderqueer person, part of the larger transgender umbrella, why, if I'm, getting out of my home as a 14 years old child or 15 years old child, the very first thing after I go to the Jamaat system see is that usage of condom, unethical sex, my childhood is not ensured at all. I'll have no more childhood there. I become more vulnerable because I'm sexually abused or verbally abused in various forms of abuse these children undergo, the gender non-conforming children undergo, is highly problematic. Why don't we have a policy in place for this? So coming back to the issue that Ilhan Omar is sitting in US committee and then like questioning the Joe Biden's office that India is such a horrible country and then like the human rights record is very worst, and who gave them the right to first do this? Do America thinks that they're the mother of human rights?
But they do it in all issues, right?
No, they don't have any rights to do it at all. It's a model way of it's a modern way of kind of you are it's a modern way of colonizing.
That is there, that is true.
Yeah.
But they do it. But how is it problematic for this purpose? How are they because then comes the issue of intersectionality.
So that's why when the Home Ministry want to recruit people for have a policy on inclusion and diversity for them regarding the LGBTI community, how to include the SOGIESC communities as part of their workforce. The very first people they go and consult is this civil society, which gets funds from American State Department. And the State Department is dictated through the intel to do this and that. So especially when these people are funded, they act as pawns or puppets for them. We are not sitting in India to and funding a civil society in America, which is helping the FBI to draft a diversity inclusion policy for them. We are not trying to influence what FBI is doing there. Why then the America and Europe should influence through their civil societies, and why the civil societies are acting as a medium or footlickers for these, vested interests?
So that's why in itself it's not that bad. But when you combine it with other issues, for example, it has happened that gay people or LGBTQI people who have, for example, supported CAA or who have supported this government or praised the Prime Minister, they are expelled, they are hounded, and suddenly they are not, they are not part of the tribe.
See, first of all, this think of gay men supporting, lesbian women supporting this thing that itself is highly problematic.
Because you are trying to broaden the identity, right? You are combining issues. You have this whole identity of LGBTQI, and then you are creating this identity of, okay, you cannot support CA. Oh, okay, you cannot have pro BJP person who is also of this identity.
Just because of one tweet, I was removed from various conferences. I was cancelled from many conferences and meetings, and then we can't call it as a consequences culture too. But then the point here is that the way these people are controlling various spaces.
So that's what weaponization of this identity means.
Weaponization
for India.
Yeah, like we see a lot of majority of my community members, coming to the road, protesting against CAA, NRC, not just that, like various other politics from, you name it, they will be part of it. People are like, oh, Article 370 was removed from, Kashmir, and then like, oh, you have pushed us in darkness. As if before at removal of 370, they had gay pubs and bars and like dancing, naked on the road there.
which was much worse.
Which was even worse.
The previous system before that.
Yeah. But then this is what the vested interest means, and like, they have an agenda and they follow the agenda. For example, we have this thing called Queer Muslim Project. They don't educate the Muslim community on the SOGIESC rights or the rights of the issues related to people with diverse sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and sex characteristics. What they do, they are like, Assam is not part of India, Kashmir is not integral part of India, you join in this protest, and then who funds them? A big society funds them. And then, we will put mercy petition for, Ajmal Kasab or all these people.
So that's what interference by identity politics is.
Yeah.
They're trying to influence, they're hijacking this agenda, and then they're weaponizing the identity, and then they are influencing the local politics.
For example, till 2015, even 16, I think we had this Chennai Rainbow Pride Parade as Chennai Rainbow Pride Parade. And now, we in Tamil, these people have renamed it as Self-Respect Movements Pride Parade.
To align with the Dravidian ideology.
Not with Dravidian. Namami Dravida Vedasagam. Dravidian itself is such a sacred word. But
the current
the Dravidian politics is different from Dravidian philosophy, basically. Both are quite opposite. So whereas this Dravidian, not Dravidian, but the Periyarist movement, especially this anti-Hindu Periyarist movements, or like, they have hijacked the space successfully, and they kind of, you call it as self-respect movements, Swayamaryade Peran. It's what sort of nonsense is as if before Periyar comes, there was no self-respect for us, before Periyar, we had Kutandava temple in Veluppuram, Arjuna getting married to Krishna, and these folk traditions, the beautiful stories, and the spiritual spaces and traditions need to be protected. Will US fund to do this? No. Our Indian government needs to concern about it.
So what will be your specific recommendations or suggestions to the government and to the people who genuinely want to support this movement, to support these people and not get into those kind of identity politics?
See, the government needs to have a system. A government need to have a centralized system which controls the discourse or anything related to sexual orientation, gender identity, expression, and sex characteristics. That is SOGIESC. Discourse need to be controlled under a centralized institution, either government funded or autonomous body. As an autonomous body under the government, it should lie down strategy and policy guidelines for both public and private sector companies and institutions, including judicial body, judicial academies, for parliamentarians, for various other things,
other organizations in the government.
Yeah. And apart from having this centralized institution, we need to protect the narrative. We need to document the indigenous gender-specific sacred spaces and the narratives around that. We need to protect it.
Is anyone doing that?
No one is doing it. We are trying to do it, but then we don't have enough resources. Without even having an office, we have successfully, achieved a lot in the policy making space or in the policy sphere. So it's like dharmo dharmati rakshitaka, like that, just for the sake of dharma is what to say,
dharma protects
dharma is protecting us.
Dharma.
Yeah, dharma is protecting us, and dharma is leading us on this. So
great. On this note, thank you so much for education on this very important topic.
There are a few things.
Please.
For example, when it comes to development, after passing the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act 2019, I have been attending the grievances of at least 36 people, and then these are human rights violation which took place in the Jamaat system. after this present government came into place, and then they sponsored Tudi Chand's case in Court of Arbitration for Sports, and because of the BJP government, the because in sports only female athletes need to undergo sex verification test. It's not very compulsory for male athletes. They do undergo, but they're not in a humiliating manner like female athletes underwent earlier. So Rio Olympics became first Olympics which took place without sex verification test because the Modi government sponsored the case of Tudi Chand's case in Court of Arbitration for Sports in Lausanne, through which the International Association of Athletic Federations regulations and norms become unscientific on various aspects and then while forming this law, we have struggled a lot, and through this law, this person called Urvashi, for 8 years she was trying to get the property rights of her mother. With just an intervention, I passed. Urvashi became the first trans woman to inherit her property as a trans woman. With the people whom we supported, for example, Asian Games medalist Shanti Soundararajan, who was kept nude for more than 7 hours in front of 11 male doctors at Doha Asian Games in the name of sex verification test or gender test, was left alone, in the Congress time, or even 2014 or 15. 2016, we convinced the state government to offer her a permanent position as an athletic coach. So a lot of developments are taking place. A lot of discussions are happening. We see Congress government changing their Facebook pages and profile pictures, or a lot of things in the rainbow thing. They never did it during their tenure. So we need to definitely acknowledge there are a lot larger discussion are happening around this subject in a more constructive manner than earlier. But that should be more Indian and Indic.
And how do you see the developments in the West? For example, there are so many cases where men have transitioned into, they have become trans women, and they are competing with the women athletes in various games.
No, that's a bit problematic because a biological male or a person who was assigned as male at birth transitioning as a woman cannot be a female. So they can't kind of go and compete there. But if their sex characteristics are very different, then when I mean sex characteristics, they may have triple X chromosome or XYX chromosomes and all those things. Then it's fine.
Okay.
Because for example, Shanti Soundararajan was assigned as female at birth. With one pair of borrow shoes, she won 11 international medals. She have this condition called, in which the testosterone is produced excessively in her body. Just because she produces excessive testosterone, it doesn't mean that she is lesser than other women.
But would that not be
we don't have
disadvantageous?
No, we don't have scientific evidence to
prove anything.
Yeah.
And hope that whatever suggestions, policy suggestions and other recommendations that you are giving to the government, they will be followed through. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Sure.